Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense, where we make some nonsense out of the sense all around us, or we make some sense out of the nonsense. Listen, we got some serious things that we need to discuss about, and I'm not necessarily super good at seriousness all the time. People usually take a second to decide whether or not I'm actually serious or I'm not serious, or am I joking or am I not joking with them. And part of that's the personality that I've chosen, the character that I've chosen to be, right? That we're, again, our world is super serious. And sometimes there needs to be a little nonsense, right? Sometimes we create nonsense to make a facade for what's really going on, right? And again, we need to understand that the enemy of our souls is constantly trying to distract us, right? And we see that played out within people, right? People are always trying to distract us. It's the idea behind magic, right? We're going to distract you. We're going to have you looking intensely at this moment while we bring something in else at this moment, while we make something else happen at this moment, right? It's what we do, right? When we're little kids, we learn and hope that our dad or mom get distracted so that we can get out of the punishment that's coming, or all of those kind of things. And we're living in a world where distractions are keeping us from what's really important. So I want to take some time this week and just do some little short challenges to you on making some sense out of the nonsense all around us. Again, I said this earlier today with my good friend Mark Hansen, Pastor Mark, and he corrected me a little bit, and it was rightfully so. I think there was a time where most people would believe that we're living in the end times. We're living in the last days. But currently, with all of the new polling they've done, all of the things they've done, less and less people are finding religion to be important in their life. Now, I hope that's not you, because you're listening to something that is religious in nature. But we're finding that less and less people are finding that has any effect on you. Part of that reasoning I'm going to promote to you, right, to tell you, propose to you that some of the reasoning for that is because we've been waiting 2,000 years for some of the things that Jesus said were going to happen. The early apostles said were going to happen, right? So early on, Jesus made it very clear, like, hey, this world's going to end, right? There's a plan for the end. You need to be prepared for that. If you're not prepared for that, you might not make it, right? But Paul states that he thought the end, the return of Christ, was really soon when he was alive, right? So 70 AD or so, Paul thought that, hey, Jesus is going to return any minute. There's absolute truth in that statement. The problem is we're 2,000 years removed. And for 2,000 years, people have said, hey, Christ is coming back. Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. We're almost at the end. We're almost at the end. We're almost at the end. We're going to get there. Jesus could come back anytime, right? I can remember in 1988, the billboards, the people who were absolutely positively sure, right, that the end was here, right? That, Jesus is coming back, 1988, right? It's funny because some of the billboards that had that on it were suddenly changed to Jesus is coming back, and they just got rid of the 1988 stuff, right? So we've lived under this idea that Jesus is coming back, and Jesus is coming back, and that's a true statement. But after 2,000 years of trying to warn people, after 2,000 years of really trying to get people to be like, hey, you need to pay attention, you need to pay attention, you need to pay attention, people are again at a state where they're like, we've been hearing this. We've been hearing that Jesus is coming back for a long time now. And the truth is, he's not come back, right? He's not coming back is what that ends up with. People just believing it's not going to happen, right? Again, I don't know how it worked with Noah, right? I don't know if when God told Noah, build an ark, I'm going to flood the earth, I'm going to get rid of all of the bad, I'm going to start over your family. I don't know if Noah started out by telling people, hey, it's going to flood, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain. Now, again, when we go back and we look at that story, we have to realize it had never rained before. These people didn't know what rain was. So Noah is trying to tell them, it's going to rain. And the people are like, you're crazy. Right? So again, can you imagine year one? Everybody goes out and buys an umbrella. Everybody's got one. It's going to rain. They all got umbrellas. Right? And ponchos. Right? And they got all kinds of things going on. Number 2 year happens. Number 3 year happens. How quickly do you think the umbrellas got discarded? How quickly before generations of people, right, were told it's going to rain, building an ark because God's going to flood the earth, it's going to rain, and it never happened. But what we need to remember is the end of the story of Noah, right, which is at one point, God tells Noah, get you and your family in the ark, and he closes the door. Then guess what happens? It rains, right? So again, God warned people, Jerusalem's going to be conquered. Jerusalem's going to be totally destroyed. Jerusalem's going to be this. And the people, they believed it at first for a little bit maybe, but as time goes on, they start to believe that no, God's going to protect us no matter what we do. No matter what we do, God is going to protect us. And then all of a sudden, one day, the Babylonians show up. Just not out of the blue. They knew they were coming, but they assumed that God was going to protect them like he always protected. So they had been warned about the army of the north. They'd been warned that it was coming down. They'd warned what it was going to do. But they began to believe, because nothing happened, that they were being supernaturally protected. It didn't matter what they did. And then they had some false prophets that came along and started saying, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. God's never going to destroy his people. And then guess what happens? One day, the Babylonians actually attack Jerusalem. Way before that, they're attacking villages and ransacking and doing all the things that you do when you're taking over places, right? But still, there's this idea that they're not going to take over Jerusalem. Jerusalem's God's. Let me leave you with this thought on part 1, right? All over the place. And let me narrow this down to tell you, Jesus is coming back. Just like the ark. Right? One day, Jesus is going to say, enough, done, period. Before he comes back, Jesus says there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen. Right? But if we're not careful, we get dulled to this stuff. And we start thinking it'll never happen to us. It's not going to happen. And again, arrogantly, we start to say, you know what? God loves the United States. The United States is the new Israel, man. It is God's apple. He's never going to destroy us. If you go back and you read some of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and other places, you're going to see the same conversations that the people had that we're having today. God would never do this. God's not going to destroy. Better be really careful, because for about 2,000 years, the country of Israel didn't exist and was a desert land, most of it, right? It was a God-forsaken place. And they were assured that that would never happen. And they kept sinning and sinning and sinning and doing whatever they wanted to do. And then they ended up for 2,000 years in a basically God-forsaken land. We want you to think about whether or not that is what might be on the verge of happening with the United States. Right? Might we be on the verge where God says, I've warned you, I've warned you, I've warned you, I've warned you. Now it's going to happen. And what happens if that happens? Now again, the first question you have to answer for yourself is, do you believe that Jesus Christ is coming back? You need to answer that question for anything else to make sense. If your answer is no, well then guess what? You can listen to the rest of this week's nightly nonsense, and it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. You might learn a little knowledge. But if your answer is yes, I do believe Jesus is coming back, then I would invite you to listen to the next few nights, right? And again, the other shows that are here at Drash Ministries, some of the things that are going to be happening down here at Drash Ministries that God has yet to even really reveal. But the messages and the words that people are saying, because God is attempting to get his people ready for what's coming. So Listen, we'll leave it right there. That gives you a whole bunch of stuff to chew on. Hopefully, you'll choose to join me tomorrow night as we do another episode, Nightly Nonsense. See you then.